This video is designed for students who missed the demonstration of the Enigma in our class today, or for those students who saw the demonstration in class and just want to see it again. What we have is a black box that's in the shape of a rectangular prism, basically constructed from plexiglass that's been welded shut so it can't be opened. There's an opening in the top of the container that will allow for water to be poured into it. There's also a small pinhole near the back of that opening. Underneath, you may not be able to see this, but there is a piece of glass tubing extending from the Enigma box. I'm going to put a beaker underneath. Hopefully you can see the graduations and the beaker. But this is a 500 milliliter beaker. In class, we found that when we poured into the box about 75 milliliters of water, and this water has been dyed red, just water with red food coloring. When we pour 75 milliliters of water into the Enigma box, something very interesting happens. Let's observe. 75 milliliters of red water going in. Okay, if you notice, water is now starting to pour out of the bottom of the box through the glass tubing, and that water is a different color. It's actually blue. And at this point, it's filled the container to much more than 75 milliliters. It's actually at about 250 right now, and it's still increasing. Color of the water is getting a bit darker. Seems to be going from a blue to more of a purple, shade of purple. All right, so at this point we have about 475, a little over 400, maybe about 475 actually, milliliters of water that has poured out of the box. And remember, we only put in 75 milliliters of red water. Many students today offered suggestions regarding other things we could do to the box. And we actually did some of those, we actually tested some of those suggestions. For example, a student might have asked me to put in another 75 milliliters of red water. So I'll do that now and see what happens. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to pour in 75 more milliliters of red water. We'll see what happens. Okay, here we go again. So 75 milliliters of red water. I'll get a beaker, put it underneath. We'll try it out, see what happens. 75 milliliters of red water going in, just like before. Well, that's interesting. At this point, nothing happens. That in and of itself is an observation, but kind of an interesting one, because before, when I poured 75 milliliters of red water into the Enigma, 475 milliliters of water that eventually turned sort of a purple color came out. Well, that's not happening here. Let's try something else. Let's put in a bit more water. Okay, so 75 milliliters of red is what I just put in. I'm going to put 25 more in, maybe make it 100. See if that does anything. So 100 milliliters of red water going in. Okay, still nothing happens. Let's try a bit more. Okay, in this beaker I have about 375 milliliters of blue water. I'm going to pour that in and we'll see what happens. Okay, at this point we get water flowing from the bottom of the Enigma again, and it appears to be purple. Let's see how much we get. Okay, looks like we get around 475 milliliters again of water that has poured out of the Enigma box. Okay, at this point your job is to use the observations that you've gathered to come up with a reasonable explanation for what's going on here. First, you are to think about what might be inside of this box. We can't open it, but using the indirect observations that you gather, can you come up with a possible configuration for whatever's on the inside of this box that might be reasonable in explaining why this works the way it does? On your paper, what you're going to do is draw a diagram which shows what you think is on the inside. So imagine if, pretend that we had a knife or a saw and we cut this box right down the center and we opened it up so that you could look directly inside. What would the inside look like? Draw a diagram of that and label the parts that you think are there. Then you are also to, in 1 to 2 paragraphs, and I ask that you type this in class, write neatly if you can't type it, but in 1 to 2 paragraphs explain how this works, and definitely use the names of the parts that you think are there in your writing. We'll talk more about this on tomorrow, and good luck.